namaste. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this session on leadership talk that we are doing at the Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership. And for this particular session, as we all know, we are having our own founder, Dr. Partha S. Ghosh, and we're doing some leadership discussion with him based on his experience, his study, his research work, and the kind of things he has done in his life. So welcome back, and sir, thank you for joining us back for this second session that we're doing on leadership talk to continue our discussion for the day, sir. In this session, I would first of all like to understand when we talk of leadership and when you are someone who is an inspiration for so many people as a leader yourself, and you always talk of leadership development. Who are your leaders? Who are the people whom you look upon as the real leaders or the heroes that you have, taken up as your role models?
Thank you for the question. And indeed, salute to all the great leaders that I had the privilege to work with, to serve, and indeed often lead, because that is the nature of my profession, management consulting. And being the nature of the profession that I've been for the last almost 4 decades, it is true that I've come across great leaders, many of them in Japan, in China, in Southeast Asia, in India, in Europe, in the United States. So indeed, many people's faces come to my mind. But now, if I had to really pick up the ones which have left behind in my heart a significant mark, who will they be? Now, when I think of the United States, let me think of by region. In the US, the person who has really influenced me is Mr. Marvin Bower. Many of you may know his name, many may not. Marvin Bower is the person who built up McKinsey and Company after Mr. James O. McKinsey passed away. And what he did in building up the firm, as we used to call it, he made tremendous amount of sacrifice only to uphold what Mr. James O. McKinsey believed in, the principles of top management consulting. And that's what he adhered to with highest amount of integrity, honesty, and built up a great firm. As you may know, McKinsey is respected all over the world. And that happened because of, I would say, only one person, Marvin Bower. And I was very fortunate to come in contact with him, not once, not twice, many times, particularly when I was the New York office of McKinsey and Company. I had the privilege to have lunches with him when he used to share his experience, how he built up the firm. So Marvin Bower is clearly one person who has influenced me.
Okay.
And then the other person that comes to my mind is Al Gore, who was the vice president of the United States during the Clinton administration. I met him a couple of times, but in one meeting, when we were discussing change management, I liked about him his ability to connect many dots which we may not connect, because he was talking about change management in the context of biology, in context of physics, in the context of tornado. And in the process, he explained to the people who were together, there were only 12 of us in this room, we were all talking about change management. But I liked the perspective that he brought in change management. On one side, there was a tremendous amount of humility in the way he was talking, yet he was making some profound statements and observations which stood out in my mind. And there are many others. I remember Chad Holliday, who was the chairman of DuPont, whom I had the privilege to meet, interesting enough, when he was heading up DuPont Asia Pacific in Tokyo. He stands out. Similarly, in Japan, I came across some great leaders. Kazuma Tateishi, who built up Omron Tateishi Denki, which is Omron company. I came across Akio Morita, who is a founder and was the chairman of Sony Corporation. And then I also came across people like Lee Kuan Yew, who was the Prime Minister of Singapore. I had the privilege, he influenced me because of his, again, several features, particularly humility, his vision about Singapore. And the other person, many may have been forgetting, but I had the privilege to meet. His name was Rod Carnegie. He was a very impressive personality who used to be in McKinsey, went back to Australia where he was from, and I had the opportunity to meet him when he was running a company called CR Zinc, which is a mining company, a very impressive personality. And then India, I feel the persons, again, I met a lot of great several interesting enough, several people stand out in my mind. And I have, as you know, met almost all the leaders in business as well as in government, both at the center
Sure.
as in the state level. But few people that stands out are Ratan Tata,
Mhm.
Narayan Murthy in business. I would include Deepak Parekh in banking. Then in politics, I was very impressed when I had a meeting with Chandrababu Naidu, Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. And then, of course, many people feel he's a communist, but I was very impressed with Mr. Jyoti Basu, who was the Chief Minister of West Bengal. And then, I had meetings with Manmohan Singh. I was impressed. But again, they all have their own characteristics. Do they fall all in the same category of leadership? Maybe not, but they bring together a beautiful, I would say, tapestry of what defines a leader in my mind.
Yes. Wow, that's amazing. And so, what a wide bouquet of leaders which you have spoken of, starting from people who are consultants to politicians to someone who's managed companies, and obviously people like Okyo Morita has actually inspired a lot of people. His book Made in Japan has been one of my favorites. In fact, it might be just here right behind me, which I have probably read it in my childhood, and it inspired me the way he brought up the whole company, being a war veteran and then. So, excellent, sir. This is a great bouquet of people. So, when we talk of so many leaders and when you're talking from a wide spectrum of areas which they have worked in, but there must be some common denominator. I mean, there must be some kind of traits which you feel are common. And that's when I would say a common denominator. And that is what probably we can say are the ones which make leaders separate from followers. And
Mm.
what are these traits which you see in them?
Yeah, let me think. When I think of these, I gave you perhaps 15 or 20 names, and there are many others, by the way. I do not want to undermine anyone because I've definitely benefited from the interactions I had with a person like Lee Kuan Yew, or for that matter, Suleiman Demirel, who was the president of Turkey, or there was another individual in China I was very, very impressed with. His name was, um, he was a head of hire. I'm trying to remember his name, Zhang Ruimin, Ruimin Zhang. Now, when I think about all these individuals, one thing I must say stands out very clear and loud is curiosity. Curiosity. Because every time I met with them, I was many times 20, 30 years younger than them, sometimes 10 years younger than them. And now I would say many of the leaders I meet there are my age group. Uh, I invariably notice they want to know more. They know, for example, I'm working on leadership. They want to understand. Partha, can you tell me how could I be a great leader? What do you see in me which you think is not good enough? That humility, though they are great leaders,
Wow.
I see that curiosity with humility.
Wow.
And it's genuine. It's not to impress me or not to impress
Yes.
anyone. It
Yes.
is genuine.
Yes.
Secondly, I see compassion. Compassion for the universe, compassion for the world, compassion for people. There's a general sense of empathy. They tend to be collaborative because when they talk, I see how they connect many dots, many people, many thoughts. So that collaborative spirit of that it is just not only my thinking, but is multiple thinkings that we have to bring together.
Hmm.
They have a clear conscience. I feel they have a deep understanding of themselves, and they are very clear in their purpose, clarity of purpose. Their communication is very crisp, And I would say the two most important things that I have noticed in them, they have a tremendous confidence in their inner self, and they have the courage to explore unknown areas, courage to uh, often look innocent, the courage to expose their thoughts which not be fully cooked. And I think that has all come together beautiful. I would now, when I've shared with you, I think about it, I just realized I used 8 C's. Eight
Yes.
C's.
Yes.
If I let me see what I can remember. I talked about curiosity, compassion, collaboration, clear conscience, clarity of purpose, crisp communication, confidence in your inner self, and courage.
Yes.
Did I get it right?
Yes, absolutely, sir. To the point.
Somehow it just came together in my mind, and must say that because of these 8 C's,
Yes.
what I have noticed in these great leaders that have literally etched their thoughts in my heart. They live ambitiously this to serve a mission. They live ambitiously,
All right.
not to serve themselves, to serve a mission.
Wow.
They work with from a vision plane.
All
They
right.
work from the vision plane as opposed to the miseries and vagaries of today.
Mhm.
They are humble
Mhm.
but very firm in the principles.
Sure.
And during times of adversity, they demonstrate grace under pressure. They calm, they are in peace, but they're solving a very difficult problem.
Interesting.
So, this is what comes to my mind when I think of all the great persons. Many of them are no longer in the world, like Mr. Morita, Kazumata Teishi, uh, Andrew
Thank you.
Carnegie. But I must say that these are the features
We should.
that have etched my mind.
I mean, excellent. So these are the 8 C's, and when I was writing down, somehow I thought, how come everything is sounding from the same syllable? And then when you mention about the 8 C, that's where it comes in. Starting from curiosity to compassion to collaboration to clear consciousness, commitment, communication, confidence, and courage. Excellent, sir. It really shows how you have really analyzed all these people with whom you have really worked with and tried to see how they work and learn from them. Not only, as you mentioned, that they always have this attitude of learning or curiosity, as you mentioned, but then we also need to have that to learn from them also. So really wonderful to see this. So when you mention this communication, and it becomes a very important aspect when it comes to leadership or any kind of leader role which is there. How have you seen this leaders communicate their own vision, mission, goal? Because I do experience this with a lot of companies where they would call up a speaker, a keynote speaker, and then they would ask the keynote speaker to speak to their team about the company's vision and the mission, because they say they don't listen to us, they would probably listen to someone from the outside, and that's the reason why. So leaders at times fail to communicate their vision, mission, what the goal is all about, and motivate the team in that. So, but then how have the successful leaders done that? Any
Very good.
particular trait? Yes.
But communication is not easy. As you know, Peter Drucker used to say, 90% of leadership is communication. And communication is the broadest term, not communication that's how you speak.
Mhm.
Now, first thing about communication, which I think Mahatma Gandhi used to talk about beautifully, be the example. So practice what you preach. So the best way to communication is, I think, when the way you live, the way you do your work, that itself becomes the most powerful communication vehicle.
Mhm. Sure.
Practice, so how you practice what you preach. But let me now talk about the preaching part, which is the verbal meaning of communication. The preach, what I've noticed, the great leaders have this ability to reduce very complex concept ideas into simple terms. simple sound bites,
Right.
both verbal and non-verbal,
Right.
often quite silent, but through the word. One person told me the most best eloquence is silence. So sometimes the posture, the non-verbal language that you use, which actually represents how you practice what you're preaching, is way I think great leaders communicate. So normally what I've seen now, if I really bring it down to Monday morning actions for people desirous to become leaders, yes, you have to learn how to communicate, but communicate in simple terms, in the language of the audience, both verbal and nonverbal. But do not stop there. You have to practice. If you want to send a message that in my organization, everyone has to start their meeting on time, you cannot, as a leader, afford to keep someone waiting outside more than 1 minute, not even more than 1 second, if you want to be precise.
Yes.
But as soon as you keep someone waiting because you feel you are the chairman of the company, someone can wait for you, you are basically compromised your communication power on timeliness. You lost the right to talk about timeliness because you do not know how to live in a timely fashion. So I think it is a lot of responsibility. Leadership is about responsibility, being responsible of what you teach, what you preach, what you say, and then ensuring that your personality is respecting everything that you say from A to Z.
Yes, true. Actions and behavior should somewhere match, and probably I would say even put it more in the Indian context, the thought, speech, and action. Three things need to be aligned. If they are not, then there is a challenge. And I would say what you're saying somewhere is reflecting on that because they do what they say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing, sir. So I would say the key to communication is verbal, non-verbal, and but then in that leadership by example, leadership by living what you are preaching. So that is what would come into
Yeah, absolutely.
Crux, I would say, of that one thing. So now, when you're doing this, and you rightly mentioned the word communication, but when we talk of leaders, we look at people's behavior, the way they talk and they communicate. But however, there is this challenge which comes in that the leader himself might be doing it, but then how does he replicate this amongst his people? How does he empower the team to behave like that? How does he empower or motivate the team to be functioning in that particular behavioral manner which we or leader would probably look at? So communicating is one thing, and then also empowering and motivating is the second thing which is there. So how do these people, because I'm sure you've seen people who have led lakhs of people as a leader under them, but then communicating and then making them do that becomes at times a challenge for leaders. So how do they do that?
Good question, Pranab. As you know, I have done more than 200 leadership workshops.
Yes.
And particularly when I do the workshops for the C-level executives, people who are already in leadership roles, many of them believe they are in leadership roles, but they are not good leaders. They do believe, and that's why they come to the workshops. And that's why they become great leaders, because they have the humility to understand they are good managers, but maybe not good leaders. Now, the common question they ask is the question that you just raised. So I love it. They love it. What can I do to motivate my team?
Yes.
How do I enter? Partha, I've got these great ideas, but seems like my next level and the next levels, they do not either understand me or they do not fully comprehend what I'm saying. And of course, I do not believe they're stupid. There's something I'm not doing right.
True.
At the same time, I've seen leaders who, with very little communication, they seem to create the harmony.
The aura is
harmony within others. So it's a very good question. So what is the difference between that leader who quietly and silently bring everyone together versus another leader who is equally smart, have the same message, but cannot create that harmony? So what is the difference? the first thing I noticed that the persons who manage that process well, the communication, the empowerment, the motivation, they have uncompromising focus on principles and purpose. They're not saying, do this for me. They're focused on the principles with which that organization should be managed and what is the profound purpose that organization must serve. So
Sure.
that is where they are extremely strict and disciplined, and they continuously repeat that we stand for these principles, and this is the fundamental change that we want to bring to society through our products or services. But then, having said that, they offer a lot of space to individuals to enable their own expression given the principles and the purpose. So, because if you make everything well defined within the box, you are suffocating the individuals. You do not want to suffocate them. You want to liberate them within the guidance of principles and purpose. So that's something very important, that you allow individuals to express their inner instincts, inner creativity, allow them to experiment with their ideas, but within the boundaries of the values of the company, the principles of the company, the vision of the company, and the purpose of the company. That's point number one. They do very well.
Sure.
The second, when the organization succeeds to meet that purpose, they share the credit. However great the leader may be, they say it's not it's the teamwork. It's the team that did the work. And he lies low, not high. So he's below the achievement, not above the achievement. Achievement is by the team. And on the other side, should they fail, or should not organization's performance is below par, they take full responsibility.
Yes.
They take full responsibility. In the process, what you develop is the trust. That this is the man I want to follow, because when we do very well, and much of this is because of him or her, but he doesn't want to take the credit. But when we screw up, he says, I'm the person who has screwed up. That's the second. And third, what is very important, which I call guided mentoring. You do not mentor everyone this all the time, but in a guided way, you mentor each person depending upon his or her needs, not in a hierarchical fashion. Mind you, Pranav, a very important point.
Sure.
You are not mentoring someone because you are his boss or her boss. You're mentoring that person as a genuine well-wisher, as a caring colleague,
sure,
not as someone who is superior.
Sure.
So if you can establish these three things, which I mentioned, uncompromising focus on principles and purpose. Second, share the successes, take full responsibility of the failures. And third, guided mentoring as a colleague, as a friend, with genuine caring, as opposed to hierarchical mentoring.
Sure.
Hierarchical mentoring, I'm the boss, I know what is good for you, that's why you should do it. It doesn't work.
Yes.
It doesn't work. And that is one thing I train CEOs, C-level executives. And I look forward that the Academy of Leadership, which you are a senior executive officer, is a program that we have to undertake for the benefit of organizations in India and all over the world, because this is a very important challenge many leaders are facing.
True. So definitely, in fact, a very rightly way of putting it, and I somewhere comprehended by saying the leader should nurture his team in that context, and all the 3 points which you mentioned, starting with looking at more from the perspective of sticking by the principles and the purpose which you have. So you always giving them the right direction in that manner. You're taking care of them by letting them grow, give them credit for that. If they're failing, you support them by taking as a leader, take the blame on yourself in that context, and then obviously keeping when the challenges come in, you're keeping your cool, calm, composedness, which is there at that point of time. This cool, calm composedness, when I say it, it brings up another question in my mind because, as leaders, challenges are bound to come in, and leaders do face this challenge. But then, individually, when the leader is taking everything, the leader is leading from the front in that context. The leader at times himself starts, becoming a little vulnerable, I would say, or wavery in that manner. How do these leaders at that moment of time which comes in their thing where they're actually in between a lot of pressure work which is going on, the stress work is going on, and then they feel that they are themselves a bit vulnerable. How do they bounce back? How do they build themselves from the how did that how do they bring in that energy within them that yes, we can do it and we have to do it from that context.
This is a very common problem. In fact, currently, I must say, the President of the United States is facing that problem. And I feel, reflecting on your question, that this is the time, Pranav, when the spiritual vector that we talk about in the Academy of Leadership
Yes.
within us play a very important role. So that during difficult moments, during the challenging times, a great leader is composed and calm, graceful and fearless, both during triumphs as well as in tragedies, both during successes and failures. Leaders cannot get overexcited when you are living on success.
Yes.
They cannot afford to get depressed
When the failure
in
comes.
times of failure. That's the point number one. And to be able to achieve that persona, you have to have a very stable and elevated spiritual base, spiritual platform.
True.
And that's where, again, our Academy of Leadership could play a very, very important role. You are the expert in Chanakya principles. We have to bring the Vedic philosophy in the forefront of leadership development because it is a fact that the world that we are entering, there will be more high frequency oscillations. And in the high frequency oscillations, there'll be good moments and bad moments, nice moments and challenging moments.
Yes.
But whatever be those moments, up or down, plus or minus, whichever way you look at it, a great leader should be able to calmly lead his or her organization towards what we discussed earlier, a common purpose, a higher level purpose with strong principles. Now, you know very well, in our personal life, in business, public service, we go through ups and downs. So leadership is all about, to me, sometimes I believe, is how leaders, particularly in moments of challenges, respond. In fact, what I notice, the great leaders that I mentioned a bit earlier, their ability to embrace challenges as opposed to avoid challenges or become depressed with challenges, they embrace challenges in a fearless fashion.
Wow.
And in the process, what happens? If you do so with a positive mindset, you convert the challenges in opportunities. In fact, there's a saying in Chinese, I will not use my Chinese language now, but if I translate it, it says, challenge is equal to opportunity.
Challenge is equal to
opportunity. And that applies to you, Pranav, that applies to me. That challenge is an opportunity. And only way you can do so is have the resiliency in your intellectual vector, in your spiritual vector, and your physical vector, so that you have the ability to bounce back from setbacks and maintain the composure that we talked about. The composure, the gracefulness under pressure. That's point number one. Point number two, every point, whether you succeed or a failure, is a data point in your life. Great leaders have the ability to learn from failures, learn from sudden challenges. They wouldn't say, okay, let's get out of it, let's move into something new. They would try to understand the failure, they will understand the setback. That's a data point they build on. So it is a learning process.
Sure.
Great. And they're not only learning process for himself or herself, for the organization. And in the process, they develop the adaptability and agility that an organization needs. They take advantage of it.
All right.
And then, of course, building on that, great leaders deal with failures, challenges, which by creating a learning culture. Okay, what did we learn? What shall we do differently in the next time? And in the process, you take advantage of the failures to create the learning culture. Because when companies succeed, they feel they're on top of the world, there's nothing to learn. However, you might be preaching that it's important to learn because the world is changing. But when you fail, you take advantage of it to build that culture, which will stay with you for a long, long time.
Sure.
And the final point is open communication. It is very important for leaders when they fail, have a very open communication with the peers, with the juniors, with the colleagues, even with seniors, stakeholders, to understand why did we fail, how to deal with the challenge, and in the process, how do we create the new world out of the problem that I faced. So normally you would see our companies which have dealt with challenges with that positive mindset, with leaders who have the ability to connect the dots of success, earlier success and failures to create a new paradigm. They are the ones who have really come out as a winner. A good example is Steve Jobs. I don't know whether you know, Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. And Apple was in the shaky grounds.
Yes.
But then he came back.
It's called back, yeah.
He created the Apple that we know today.
True.
So, and what he did was to build on the failures to create a new paradigm of success, which Apple is still riding, and I think will continue to ride for next, at least I would say 25 years.
All right. Well, that's amazing coming from you, a Fortune 500, a top listed Fortune 500 company. I would not say Fortune 10 company, which it might be because it's among the top 10 companies in the world. Surviving for another 25 years at the same pace would be a great achievement in that manner.
It's rare, but Apple will because he has created a learning culture.
Culture, yes, and created that
learning culture.
Yes, yes. It was amazing. I mean, when he was talking about leaders responding to challenges in that manner and then facing difficulties, like Steve Jobs, was thrown out of the man whom he recruited, and then he was thrown out of his own company where he had to probably. I remember the movie Jobs when you spoke of this because I saw it very well in that movie, the way he was asked to leave, and then when he was begged and pleaded to come back and join and make Apple what it was again. But sir, this brings up one question. Steve Jobs being a very natural leader, I don't think he was trained somewhere. But at the same time, I'm sure there is some manner in which he has picked up these qualities from. So that brings up to this very question always, which keeps reflecting in most of our minds. Are leaders trained? Are leaders, they're born with those qualities, or do they cultivate those qualities in them? Or is there as something which is there as a characteristics from their birth itself? Is there in the DNA somewhere, or it can be trained in them? So.
That's a good question, Pranav. I do have a strong point of view, but before I go to the strong point of view, I'll give you the perspective. There are indeed many believe, in fact, many who have done research on leadership,
Sure.
They do believe that leaders are born with inherent leadership traits,
True.
and they do believe it cannot be developed through cultivation,
Mhm.
and it is kind of some kind of inbuilt persona in a individual. Some people do believe that.
Mhm.
But I must say that I don't. I do not agree with that point of view. And in fact, what they miss out, even if you look at the life of Steve Jobs, he may not have gone to a leadership school or may not have a mentor.
Yes.
But the point is, sometimes living through adversity, difficult moments, you get exposed to a situation which
Oh.
unfolds
Mm.
your leadership qualities.
Yes.
So before I get into the subject, as you know, I've been doing leadership workshops for the last 4 decades. And I begin my leadership workshop with 5 principles. I want to share those 5 principles if you allow me to.
Yes,
And
sir.
then I'll go back to the very deep question that you've raised.
Yes.
The 5 principles that I believe are: first, everyone has the traits of leadership.
All right.
So, in that way, I would say everyone is born with the traits of leadership. So, the argument that people are born with traits of leadership, only difference is in some cases, those traits get uncovered. In many cases, it remains covered. So, the role of the Academy of Leadership is to help uncover those traits. That's point number one. Point number two, these traits, they manifest in different ways,
Sure.
depends upon the context.
All right.
The way it manifested in a person like Steve Jobs
Yes.
versus Bill Gates
Sure.
versus Thomas Edison
Sure.
versus Swami Vivekananda versus Mother Teresa, they're different.
Mm.
But each one of them in their space
Mm.
were great leaders.
Mm.
Third,
Yes.
the leaders have to continuously align with the changes.
Mm.
It is not that I've become a leader, now I can expect to be leader for next 100 years. Leadership requires a continuous alignment with the environment, with the context you are in. And the context, as you know, is continuously changing.
Mm.
Fourth, effective leaders are great servants. They're believer servant as a leader.
Service.
They
Service.
serve,
Mm.
they
So.
serve a mission, they
Mm.
serve people, they serve society, they serve a goal.
Sure.
And final point, which is very important and often neglected, great leaders see greatness in others.
Wow.
Great leaders see greatness in others, their ability. Now, if I talk about these 5 points, the first point itself, I would say everyone has traits of leadership. So the people who argue
Yes.
that some people are born with traits of leadership, some others are not,
Mm.
they're partially right. What I'm saying, everyone is born with traits of leadership,
They need to be
except
disciplined.
99.9% they remain covered. 0.9%, because of the situation,
Mm.
either adversity or an opportunity, you are thrust into
The
that
situation.
role. You have to solve the problem.
Mm.
Now, role of the Academy of Leadership is to celebrate these 5 points, particularly the first point. That's why we have the Academy of Leadership, to
Yes.
help the uncovering. And since these traits manifest different ways, uncovering has to be, to a certain extent, personalized.
Wow.
So that's my view on leadership, why I believe that leadership could be developed.
Sure.
And it could be developed because we help to uncover the inner conscience.
Mm.
And that's why the Vedic philosophy becomes very important, because Vedic philosophy is all about uncovering the inner spirit.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Interesting perspective to it, because a lot of time it is seen in that manner that and we use the word narcissist or at times, things where people are so much within themselves because of the I would say the environment they are brought up in, or the families they are brought up in, or who they belong to as a particular community, and that's when they miss out on this leadership qualities also. So what I understand from this thing, and looking at from the other side of the coin as well, the traits are always there. It's how are they brought up, how are they nurtured, how are they used at times also, because the leadership trait might be used for good purpose and the bad purpose also, and that's when you also focused upon those inner qualities, the inner conscious which comes into picture, putting the Vedic thoughts in mind there, that it has to be from within, that has to come out, and the traits will come out in that manner with all these 5 points which you mentioned there. So
Absolutely.
thank you, sir. I mean,
And one thing I'd like to make in the comment,
yes,
in summary, because this is something very dear to me. If you allow me
please, sir.
just a few seconds,
Yes, please.
that it's kind of in summary, I would like to say, while some people do believe there are certain inherent traits that can contribute to leadership effectiveness, which I believe,
Sure.
I also believe that inherent traits are there, except I believe it's in everyone. Some others believe it is in few. But the prevailing view today, that leadership skills could be developed. But where again we are different, the Academy of Leadership is different. We are saying skills versus inner conscience. Skills of communication, skills of making decisions, skills of mentoring, yes, could be taught. But there's another set of attributes which we have to develop in a more artistic way, which is the spiritual vector. And that is the uncovering. So uncovering part is very important. When the Western theories say that leaders are born, only certain skills could be taught, they're being limiting their thinking process within certain category of skills, which is communication, decision making, maybe visioning. Okay, that's fine. It could be, but more important is the part which remains uncovered.
The conscience.
Some are saying inherent, but it is inherent in everyone, and that's the part that we have to be able to work with, and in the process give expression to.
True. That's why usually people from a particular family join the same profession or join the same business, I would say, because they are brought up in that culture, and that's when the inner thing has been nurtured and brought out in them. The upbringing somewhere makes those qualities come out, or I would say shine in them, that context, and that's when they become leaders, because obviously the environment which they have received, and that's when probably we feel that, oh, why are they just belonging to the same culture, the same families, or the same group of people? But then it's the uncovering of those qualities which is done by the environment which they are in, the ecosystem around them, probably helps them discover those as well. So really great, sir. Thank you very much. This gives an amazing perspective for us to learn in different contexts, skills versus inner conscious. I mean, that is a great takeaway for me at this point of time, from this last question at least. Looking forward to interact more, sir. There's many more questions coming up in my mind, and I want to probably throw them all together. But however, we'll limit this particular session here, and then look forward to the next one where we can really discuss things more in detail, especially looking at in two different dimensional point of view when you said inner and outer. So we'll explore that further, sir, in that context. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Looking
Thank you very
forward
much.
to see you again.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.